Welcome CQ University students and everyone that's joined us today. My name's Julie Holmes. I'm presenting from the CQ University Careers team. Today's webinar, Help, I Need a Job. And this forms the second of our Careers Help webinar series. We're delivering each day this week in a series of 5 sessions. So what's the purpose of today? We're going to be looking closely at the skills that make up your job search strategy and learning how to have or produce high impact applications during the job search process and how to put your best foot forward. So why? So many job seekers treat the application process a little bit like a lottery and just put in quickly uploading the resume and applying for numerous jobs, if not hundreds, of internet job vacancies. But we need to be really smart about the application process and hone our skills around the art of writing a quality resume, which we'll cover in tomorrow's webinar. How to write an effective cover letter, our interview techniques, and also understanding the job application process in general to optimise our efforts and to up our chances of making it through a competitive process. So a lot of people put in so much energy and effort, a lot of hours into developing their professional and technical skills, like completing qualifications, upskilling with short courses, maybe seeking out a mentor to help guide them along the way. Or maybe it's around working long hours and taking on extra projects in the hopes of promotion, but perhaps barely spending a minute learning about how to present these skills and accomplishments to prospective employers. So there can be a bit of a disconnect, and you'd be surprised by how many students we see who forget to put in key information into their applications. For instance, what degree they're studying in their professional resume. Not you guys, of course, but it's interesting that we're taught to be good at what we do, but maybe not so much around how to articulate our value position. And this is absolutely key. It's not just your professional development that helps, it's also important not to neglect learning about the art of writing quality applications, because your job search skills play such a significant part in your job search success. So if you think about it this way, if you're writing a top-notch quality applications targeted to those specific jobs that you're applying for, that recruiters really want to read, then there's much more likely a much greater likelihood that you'll secure a job interview sooner. And if your job interview skills are up to speed, then a job offer. And with every application cycle, which can take often weeks or even months, for instance, I can think of a couple of jobs that have taken more than 4 to 6 months sometimes from the time I put in my application to when I was actually starting on the job as a successful applicant. So increasing that or securing your job faster or getting a job offer earlier can take weeks, if not months, off your job search time, which can then translate into thousands of dollars of salary where you would have just been job searching previously. So is it worth it? Absolutely. Even just spending an hour or two brushing up on your application and job application writing skills can make a big difference. And these skills you can take with you and build upon during the lifespan of your career. Is it difficult? Not really. It's actually quite simple. It's not rocket science, but it does, and it doesn't take very long. So remember that the job application can vary, or the process can be very much about employer perceptions. The best person for the job may not necessarily be selected if they lack the skills or forget to explain why they are a good match for the role. So how will the employer know if they can't, because they can't read minds? So if it's not in the application, they can't assess it or compare these attributes among other candidates. I nearly neglected to mention that if you have questions, do please pop them into the chat application. I will be responding to those near the end of the session today, but do feel free to add those as we go along. So let's set the stage. We'll be looking at the job search process in relation to the Australian job market. So whether you've spent some time growing up in Australia or perhaps you're more familiar with another job market in a different country, either way, it can be helpful to look at the big picture view of how things work here. Excuse me. And with the job market changing rapidly and quite dramatically, as we've seen in the last 10, 15 years, it's really important to be keeping up to date with how things are working. So a big one is that the employment market is very active, with the last total jobs advertised on the internet recorded across Australia is over 170,000 for the month of January, which is typically a quiet month. So there are a lot of jobs being advertised out there, and the internet usage plays a large part of that. There is an expectation that you'll have done some internet research on employer information as you complete your job search. The term resume and CV are usually used interchangeably. It's also worth noting that cover letter, covering letter, and application letter are often used interchangeably as well, and mean the same thing. Your job applications usually form two parts, your resume and your cover letter, sometimes a third, which will be responding to selection criteria. So sometimes people get a little confused and pull all of those and amalgamate them into one document or two documents. They need to each have their own separate document, and sometimes there may be a fourth component which will involve completing an application form. There's also a large number of jobs that occur in the hidden job market, so we may not see them advertised, and we'll touch on that later. Australian employers also really value candidates that already have experience working with another Australian employer. And we'll talk about that later too. Spelling is an Australian British, not US, so it's really important, no matter how your spell check wants to flip everything back to Zs, that you go through your applications with a fine-tooth comb. So when you look at the job search process, there's quite a lot of different skill sets at play. How would you rate yourself for each of these? Perhaps you might feel quite confident in some areas, and others you may feel like perhaps you need to brush up on. So it's just some time to reflect to yourself. As you can see, the job search process does involve a breakdown of quite a few job search skills. So let's simplify these and break them down into three main areas. And they involve, firstly, knowing how to look for jobs that are suitable, knowing how to write your written applications according to conventions, and being able to demonstrate your key selling points, whether it be in a resume format, cover letter, or selection criteria. And your marketing skills when you get to present yourself to the employer, whether it be over a video conference, during a face-to-face job interview, or perhaps over the phone. Another set of skills come into play, and that is marketing yourself in person. So let's look at the methods for finding suitable jobs. Let's imagine there's a job vacancy that's opened up for a role that you'd really like. How might you find out about this job opening? What kinds of methods might you use to look for this position? So here's a range of different job search methods, and some of them you may have already used in the past, perhaps some you haven't. Ideally, it's good to use a range of strategies and methods, not just one, to help broaden your job search skill, job search net, and the possibility of securing your next job faster. We'll be touching off over some of these job search strategies. We also have a wealth of resources within Career Hub, which you can follow up on afterwards and upskill in each of the areas that you are wanting to develop. So let's talk about recruitment agencies. Keep in mind that they're paid by the employer. So they work for the employer, not for you. But they're good to have an extra set of eyes and ears looking for positions on your behalf. So you can register with agencies within your field. Good to build up a relationship with your recruiter. Accept short-term or part-time contract roles to demonstrate your reliability and dedication and build up your track record. It can be a good idea too to hit them up and ask for some resume or interview feedback. So asking questions like, could you give maybe 3 suggestions or ways that I could improve on my interview performance, or can you describe some ways that I might make some improvements on my resume? Because they see a high volume of resumes, that feedback can be really valuable. Don't just rely on others to make those connections for employment opportunities. Do be doing your own job search as well. So let's look at some online, the online job searching, which is the most popular method used in Australia. So which job search sites have you used? These are some of the biggest job search sites in Australia. Some are amalgamators like Indeed.com that pull in from other job search engines as well. So some tips and pointers for using jobs and job websites and applying for jobs online. You can often register your profile and resume and subscribe for job alerts with some job search engines. And many sites will offer you the option of posting your resume into an online database, which will be visible to a large number of registered recruitment agencies and employers. So this service can be invaluable because the databases are searched by thousands of recruiters, not just every day, but even every hour. Some little tips to be thinking about is to check, even if you've subscribed to job alerts, do check every day for new listings. Stick to your word limits when completing applications because they can be culled very quickly if you exceed those limits. Proofread to avoid any spelling mistakes, always goes. And you may be asked to fill out a form, so allow time to complete this and perhaps do a practice run in a Word document before submitting. Save your files in a format that everyone can read. Most commonly used, for instance, Adobe PDF formats. Keep a copy for yourself with every job application that you complete for your own records and tracking, so you can remember what you've already communicated to prospective employers. And also apply as soon as possible because many employers close vacancies off once they've received enough applications, so you want to get in quick. When you are going directly to employer websites, some organisations will just recruit on their own website. So where you are applying for those positions, you're potentially eliminating some of the competition, and you're also demonstrating your targeted interest in the particular organisation. Just a word about privacy as well. You do need to be mindful of the information that you're putting onto your internet job applications because it can be a bit of a jungle out there with trolls. So be careful about giving out personal details like your tax file number or your date of birth, banking details, etc., because that's the type of information that can be used by identity thieves. You will be required to give those kinds of details once you've secured a job. But at this point, you wouldn't usually be forwarding this information. So for more hints and tips, do check out the online applications guide and Career Hub under the quick links. You'll find that. And of course, there's another area to be thinking about, and that is your LinkedIn profile too, and we'll be covering off on that in a moment. So with online applications, it's very tempting when you see that little blue button. Looks very familiar, so convenient. A single button on the job search website, which you can fire off, a dozen job applications just while you're having your breakfast in the morning. But by clicking that button willy-nilly, it's possibly the worst way or the worst thing you can do for your chances of success. Essentially, it's a bit like a self-destruct button for job applications. So when we're asking struggling students who may not be having much luck with their job search, it's not uncommon for us to hear that they've applied literally for hundreds of jobs, but really, when you break it down, it's quite often using this hit and miss method, and they haven't had one response. So sending off one resume to dozens of different jobs is a good way to almost guarantee that you won't get an interview from any of them. Okay. So it's important to carefully read the job application, target your job application to the requirements, do some additional research from the company's website and on LinkedIn, and going about it that way. We're going to take a look now at some common job search websites for graduate employment. So this is where organisations are recruiting for their graduate programs early the following year. Typically, they're open now and taking applications up until around about late April. So if you are in your final year of study and you're a new graduate, this is a final year student or new graduate, it's a good time to be investigating the graduate program opportunities being advertised at the moment and getting your application in now. To find your you can find the Helpful Graduate Websites Guide in Career Hub, again going into the quick links under the job searching section. You'll also find a really helpful resource, the CQU e-book edition for graduate opportunities, and there's also a link in there for the Graduate TV link with YouTube videos featuring a number of different graduate programs, employers and organisations, so do take a look. We're also running a graduate employability bootcamp in a few weeks' time for over a week, running a series of webinar sessions on how to write quality graduate program applications. So if you are in your final year of study and you're interested in the 2018 graduate program vacancies, do join us for those. So now that we've looked at how to find those jobs, let's take a quick look at some tips relating to job searching. And keeping in mind that we'll go into detail about how to write quality resumes in tomorrow's webinar. So within the job search process, do keep a record of your research and findings, and do be using a range of different methods. Don't just apply for graduate programs, for instance. It's also important to be thinking about your audience as well. So while the application process can be hard work, seeing all your accomplishments collated all together can actually be a nice little confidence boost. But a lot of people do make that mistake where they actually write the application for themselves and not for the audience, who is your prospective employer, right? So just listing, your previous positions and a little bit of information about what you actually did, it just won't cut it in today's competitive job market. You need to be ensuring that the information makes sense to the employer. You need to give your recruiters a good sense of who you are and what you're capable of. An employer wants to know what you're going to do for them, and the way to communicate that is to explain what you've done for others and how you could apply this to them. So if you need to write for your audience, how can you find out what they're most interested in? What do employers want? What are the priority skill sets and attributes that they're looking for within your industry in the job market right now? How do we find this out? Well, the labour market is actually a really good resource tool. So do jump on those job search engines that we were talking about previously, research a number of roles around the country, it doesn't matter where they are geographically, and look for patterns around what employers are valuing and what they're seeking right now. Maybe it's a particular software and experience using that particular software. Maybe there's particular skill sets, qualifications, specialisations. So keeping across that can be very helpful. Talking to recruiters and employers and your industry contacts can also be a really helpful way to investigate this. So getting involved in our alumni mentoring program, CQ Uni Career Connections program, is a good way to do that. At industry days, we have our careers fair coming up shortly. You can ask employers direct questions as well. So making those connections can make a big difference. This is also some interesting information to keep in mind too. So a recent survey surveying over hundreds of thousands of employers around Australia for the skills that they were most sought after during their recruitment process, and skills that they found hard to recruit for, basically a skills shortage of sorts, were listed and asked for. And this is what they came up with. So these were identified as the most problematic for them to find and valued when recruiting. So thinking about this information and what it means for you, so not underestimating some of those soft skills that you have around teamwork, communication, solving problems, can be really valuable. So don't underestimate the value of these skill sets that you have. So the first step as well is to understand what the employer is looking for, and the way to do that is to get out your highlighter or your digital highlighter and actually go through the job ad and underline those keywords that are popping out used by the employer and recruiter. So you're looking for clues that you can find that might suggest what they value most. And doing this will help give an indicator of what the employer will be assessing as priority skills for this job vacancy. And this will help with all aspects of your written application. So as long as you can back up your claims, you can try to use these words in your cover letter. And your cover letter shouldn't just regurgitate your CV, it should zero in on why you're a good match for the job in just 3 or 4 paragraphs. A question before, should you include a cover letter? It's your chance and your opportunity to introduce yourself to an employer. So your resume is a little bit more of an executive summary, whereas your cover letter can extrapolate some of the key aspects and your key selling points and actually have that and present that to the employer. So some recruiters will actually go to that cover letter first as their first point of assessment. Some will go to the resume first. It's really important that you have a cover letter to introduce your application and target your application, whereas your resume can't do that quite so well. But you are still targeting your resume. So the attributes and the key aspects that you've highlighted in your job vacancy will help inform how you'll construct your resume, which may mean reordering the most important information first, or just sticking to some more of the relevant information. And we'll go into more detail around how to do that tomorrow. You will also use that highlighting method to separate the desirable skills and attributes with the skills that you must have into 2 categories, and then matching your skill base to those. And that will help with your response to selection criteria if the criteria are included in the job vacancy. So now that you've looked at the job requirements, you need to resist that temptation to jump straight into the job application first, because you need to understand and have a clear understanding of what it is that you have to offer. So you'll be looking at what makes you different from someone else with that same qualification as that baseline. What's your point of difference? So you need to communicate your key selling points. So think about things like your industry focus, your career goals and aspirations, where are you going, your skill sets, not just your industry ones, but your transferable skills that you've developed from other experiences in other areas, your achievements, your strengths, participation and qualities that may match the needs for that specific job. So go beyond your qualification. And we'll touch on this more in the 5th webinar in the series about how I want to be employable. And there are some strategies to look at around doing this holistically. You'll also find a whole stack of resources in the Career Hub around identifying strengths and your career planning. Of particular reference would be to go into the Careers Toolkit, and there's a Plan Your Career section there that you can have a look at too. So where to start? You've started by evaluating yourself, and you've worked out what it is that you have to offer as valuable to your future employer, and identifying and understanding what your strengths are. And we'll go into a little strategy shortly called the STAR method of how to go about doing this. So to begin with, your brainstorming, you're drawing out and considering your strengths and accomplishments, thinking about these carefully, and thinking about situations where you have succeeded. And you're looking for patterns and connections between activities. So you might find that a story starts to emerge, like perhaps you've had a bit of a theme of leadership comes up, or coaching, or maybe it's around bringing people together or improving systems, or perhaps you have strengths around communication on digital formats or marketing, but you need to identify and communicate your key selling points. And here is some context to be considering as you explore your career story. And your story will be unique to you. No one else will have the same story. So it's really understanding what that is and presenting that to prospective employers. So many people underestimate the value of their experience, from paid or unpaid experience, unpaid roles. And Australian employers like to see that you've already worked for a previous employer here in Australia, as we mentioned earlier. So do include, even if it's not within the industry and it's not a professional line of work, do include details of your previous employment, even if it was a customer service or a cleaning role. And do put that in and highlight those transferable skills, because employers do value those. So don't forget to put those in your resume. And include experience from overseas. If you've had experience overseas, you didn't just lose those skill sets the moment you got on a plane. They still they come with you, and so you definitely want to include those experiences in your resume. And not just those experiences, but looking at how you performed and how you did well in your previous line of work, so that you can explain this to your prospective employers. So, and sometimes a good way to do this is be thinking about, well, if someone did that job badly, what would happen? Maybe there would be lots of complaints or something like that. How therefore would you describe the indicator that you did do quite well? Or maybe there may be some positive indicators like feedback or awards or something that, some great results that you can think of that show your track record there. So when it comes down to what employers are looking for, it really does boil down to around about 3 things. Excuse me. So they want to know, do you perform? So what you've done previously demonstrates whether you'll be successful in their company. They want to know that you proactively use your initiative and skill sets. Basically, you're not lazy. You think about the bottom line and you work hard. So think about maybe ways that you increased revenue or decreased costs or improved productivity or enhanced the customer experience. Think about things from the employer's perspective and that baseline of usually money or time is money, or efficiency around that business model. And the other point is they want to know, do you get along well with others? Will you fit into our team? and they really are probably the three main things that they are looking at. So quite often with job applications, our message get lost in the text. So it's really important to not be rambling on and not be talking too much around generalisations, and responding to those three critical points that employers are interested in. We're going to take a look at achievement statements, which is a powerful method that you can use in your job searching bag of tricks. They can be used in your resume, but particularly in your interviews and cover letters and responses to selection criteria, so pretty handy. And people, as I mentioned, often speak in generalisations, but if you can anchor your statements with evidence and explanations of how you've successfully used that particular skill set, it really stands out and it has great impact. So it's a results-orientated statement, and looking at what you have to value in your value position. A way to start thinking about your writing some achievement statements is to first reflect on some times where you are pretty proud of from some of your previous experiences, or you feel like you may have had a little win. They don't have to be hugely big, significant things, but they are little indicators of previous performance. So within that situation, then you would be looking to break it down into three elements that make up the STAR approach. And the first aspect is, what was the situation or the challenge that you were faced with. The second element is, what skills did you use? What was the action you took? And that will really usually involve a whole range of different skills. So you can even break all of those down, and you potentially have some material to write many achievement statements. And then at the end, what was the result? What was the great outcome? The indicator that it was a positive ending to the story. And ideally, if you can, thinking about that in terms of measurables or metrics, because employers do love numbers. So if you're using percentages, if there was an improvement that was measurable, do try and use metrics. You might not have the absolute exact figures, but you will be able to have a bit of an idea in many cases from memory, and you'll be working as much as you can to from your memory of what happened. It doesn't need to be exact, but probably veering more on the conservative side of estimates. So we're looking at the three elements for the STAR approach. You're looking at how you proactively responded to the situation, but you also might be thinking about what you learned as well as part of your result response, which can be very helpful in the interview process. Once you've identified the three elements for your scenario that you've thought about, you can then start to put these together, this is the challenging part, into one concise statement, ideally. And here is an example here. And you'll find that the three elements are included in this statement. You'll find that, you know, it has a lot more impact than just stating that you were perhaps responsible for sales in a particular region. It will really jump out, and it has a lot more weighting for perhaps a recruiter reading through the application. So let's talk a little bit now about social media. So according to a lot of recent surveys, actually, a large number of recruiters do Google their candidates. So when you are job searching, apparently there's around about 90% chance that they will Google you, probably more when you're in that shortlisted phase of the recruitment process. It's very common. So it's vital that you manage your digital footprint. To do this, maybe Google yourself, check out what your public view filter is for your Facebook profile if you have one. Is it professional looking? Will it let you down? Check out the LinkedIn guides and Career Hub and set up a really good professional looking LinkedIn profile. Employers tend to go and look at that LinkedIn profile as that first point of call. And while you're doing your spring clean, check your voicemail box on your phone. Does it sound professional? I've been recruiting during times, and I've had a look at a really impressive application, gone to call the candidate to express interest and potentially set up a job interview, and went to voicemail and a very unprofessional voicemail, which was really off-putting. So ensuring that the employer can leave a message. Do they have the ability to do that? And also looking at those finer details, like your email address. Is it a professional email address? No kittens and Harmony Lotus flowers. Your name and maybe a number is fine, and that will look professional. You also want to be ready to take a call from a prospective employer at any given notice, because often employers will be screening before they invite candidates in for a job interview, because that takes managers' time and effort. So they may be doing some initial screening and asking questions for applicants while they're on the go. So being ready to respond is really important to get through that next phase. And we'll talk about some strategies around how to do that shortly. In today's world of work, always changing. So this means a lot of increased variety in our lives, and try not to think about getting a job for life. It's more about exploring a variety of work options and different jobs across our lifetime. It's also about building our skill set and taking that with us. We're responsible for our own professional development and skill development. So being prepared and to be planned for unplanned events, change and transition is also a really important part of your job search strategy. Another little tip, which is really helpful to be thinking about, a little morsel of information, is that a recent graduate survey showed that those students who were employed in their final year of study, so whether it be part-time, casual, entry level, had a much greater success rate in their graduate employment outcome than those who didn't. In fact, by around about 20% by the looks of it there. So it's really does help that part-time employment while you study, and including that in your job applications. So let's have a little look at the stages of job searching, and it helps to divide it into three different stages. And evaluating your effectiveness in each of those areas. Are your job applications converting into interview opportunities? And are those interview opportunities converting into job offers? If not, there may be an issue. So it's important not to be putting your eggs into one basket. You should be constantly job searching and cycling through those stages. Don't just put a few applications in for your dream job and then wait, because it can, as we talked about, take many months for that recruitment process in some cases. So do look at your conversion rates. If you're finding there's some issues, it may be worth getting in contact with a careers counsellor just to dig a little deeper and see if there might be some development in particular areas that may help along the way. It's also a good idea to keep tabs or keep track of your applications and your job searching. It's taking a little while to respond. This is a little example of how to go about doing this. So it can be helpful to keep a record of every job that you apply for, be keeping copies of those applications so you can refer back to them, who the contact person is, in case you get that call while you're on the run for the initial screening process. Have you followed up? Is this job still active? If you know that it's no longer active, you can rule those out and you can then concentrate on the other ones, and you know how many you have active at any one point in time. It's also important during your job search process that you're prepared both for success and a successful outcome and job offer, but also for what I call rejection shock, which is the knockbacks. It can be a bit of a game of numbers, and you may not be successful for every job application. So being prepared for this, which can mean, you know, thinking about holistic strategies that you can bring into your lifestyle to help you along the way. Also be thinking about red flags. So these would be from the employer perspective, and thinking about the content that you're putting in your application. So don't leave unexplained gaps in your work history. If you're taking time off for caring responsibilities, mention that. If you were taking a gap year to go overseas, do mention that. So minimise the concerns that a recruiter may have. A big one is, tip-wise, is to ensure that you have no spelling mistakes at all. It can have such a significant impact on your application. So one error can really let you down by 30 to 45%, suggested by research. So it has to be super clean in terms of having no mistakes at all. You're also wanting to ensure that you tailor every resume and cover letter for each application. So no cookie cutter blanket resume applications or cover letter applications. You have to target, so no rehashing. You need to revisit each for every application that you're making. Just a little word about the keyword challenge here, and that some large organisations do use application tracking systems to shortlist applicants for jobs. Rather than, and it takes some of that administrative burden off staff. So it may have actually gone through some software before it actually ends up sitting in front of a human being. And what they do is they match to often keywords. And, unfortunately, there's no way to access that magical list of keywords, but there are some things that you can do to help avoid falling into that proverbial black hole, and that is considering some of the same keywords and looking at some of those keywords that you're looking at highlighting when you highlighted the vacancy, and aiming to use some of those within your application to help your chances of getting through any application tracking software systems. Ideally, you want to avoid using images as well, because they can become scrambled and actually scramble your whole document through those systems. So do avoid images in your resumes. A little technique that can be helpful before you submit your application is what I call the friend review. And it's asking a friend a couple of questions, giving them a copy of your application, not telling them the job that you're applying for, and instead asking them a couple of questions. What kind of job do you think I'm applying for with this application, and what are the most important requirements for this job? And if their answers are reasonably accurate, you know you're on the right track. If not, you've probably got a little bit of work to do. We spoke about the hidden job market as well, and cold canvassing as a technique to apply for these kinds of roles. So tapping into the hidden job market is a bit more of an advanced job search strategy. We have some information around that in our Career Hub resource space. Research indicates that at least 85%, maybe if not 90% of jobs in Australia are not actually advertised. So when we're talking about, say, 200,000 jobs a month advertised on the internet alone, that's only the tip of the iceberg, because there are so many that just aren't advertised. And part of the reasons are that employers have to pay large costs for the recruitment process. It takes time. If they can find someone within their networks to fill a position, it can save them a lot of resource. So using a cold canvassing method can be a really targeted way to be looking for work. And that would mean approaching organisations that you're particularly interested in working for and that you have the skill set to match the line of work that they do, and tapping into your networks and contacts. So yes, it does take a lot more energy and time and effort to use this process. There are some techniques that you can use to help you along the way, but it's something to keep in mind is thinking about the cold canvassing approach to job search. Another little tip is to, you can never have the perfect resume or cover letter, but you can certainly make it a really polished and final draft that you send. You do need to test the job market, so try your applications and test the water and see what kind of responses that you get, and record those, keep track. So you'll find, if you're getting some good responses for interview opportunities, then you're writing quality applications. You'll find a whole bunch of the resources that we spoke about that link to these topics and job search skill areas in Career Hub. And some of the key ones that I spoke about during the session are listed here. So do take a look at those in your own time for your own professional development. We do have 3 more webinar sessions in the Careers Help series later this week, so do join us for those. Thank you for your time, everyone, and good luck with your job searching. I will just take some time now to look at some of the questions. I think my colleague Debbie may have been assisting during our session. So I'll just take a quick moment to make sure that we've responded to any outstanding questions. Do know that you can link in with us as well. So you can fire us an email, book an appointment, one-on-one appointment with a careers counsellor. And do tap in and use those resources, employment and career support resources that we have on Career Hub. Okay, so I do have a question here I can see from Meg, and it's a very good question, and it's around how to write your cover letter or your introduction letter when you're cold canvassing. And so a cold canvas letter will be a little bit different, you're right, than a general covering letter because you've got no job vacancy details to be responding to. So it will really, and we've got some details around how to do that in our cover letter writing information guide and Career Hub. But essentially you will be, you don't want it to be too long, you want to be indicating some of your really, some your key selling points that you're communicating to the employer and asking for an opportunity to discuss these with the organisation. You're also wanting to indicate that you're particularly interested in them as a company and why that is, and be indicating how you'll be following up. So you will need to ideally be following up. You also want to be getting that cold canvas letter to someone who has the ability to make some decisions around that space. And usually that reception area is not a great way, not a great starting point. You want to ideally be bypassing that. So doing some research there can be really helpful, using your networks and coming up with some creative ideas to try and get that communication to someone who has the ability to make more decisions around that space. But do take a look at that resource, Meg, and thank you for that question, because yes, your cold canvassing letter will be different from your general covering letter. Next question from Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca. Yes, so these are recorded. I'm hoping I recorded today. I think I did. So we'll be putting the recordings into Career Hub under the resources. There's a video resources. So when you jump into Career Hub, you'll see a resources tab along the top, and then a whole range of topics. You'll find them under videos, and we'll be putting them up after the week of delivery. There was a lot of information in today's session, so you may wish to revisit the aspects that you're wanting to focus on. I can see there's a question here from Rebecca as well around taking time off work when you're very sick. That can be a tricky area to navigate. It might be worth actually setting up an appointment to discuss that, but to really it's a bit more of a neutral area as to why you would have had some time off work, but it might be worth actually having a little bit more of a one-on-one discussion about how to tackle that in your job applications and the line of work that you're applying for as well. Okay, I hope that I've covered off on all the questions that are in the chat space. Thanks for your participation, guys, today. And if you do have any other outstanding questions, you can fire us an email to careers@cqu.edu.au. Thanks, guys.